If you're somebody like me who learned how to program a long time ago, probably in the beginning, you didn't have enough reasons to go for JavaScript. You had everything you wanted in programming languages, let's say like Java or C# or C++, and there was no obvious reason to go for JavaScript. Yes, of course, if you were a web programmer, you had to go for JavaScript, but if not, there was no reason to go for JavaScript. But the thing is that it has changed a lot these years. Now you could find JavaScript everywhere, not just in the front end, but also in the back end, and also many applications use JavaScript. So you as a programmer need to learn this powerful scripting language. But if you want to learn JavaScript from the basics, especially if you have migrated from programming languages like Java or C#, there are many things which are going to be somehow strange to you. Things like objects and prototypes. Now, in this short video, we try to understand at least the basics of the objects and prototypes, and we continue with the next videos. The first thing is that JavaScript is object-based language, which is much different from the other object-oriented languages, let's say like Java or C# or even C++, which are class-based. So you don't have any concept like class, which out of that class you could instantiate objects. For sure, you know, in object-oriented languages like Java or C#, we have some concepts like classes, and then we instantiate the classes to have instances, which in programming languages like Java is basically like we have a reference variable referring to some actual object, so we could say instances are the objects. And many times you could use the terms instance or objects interchangeably. So the whole thing is that we differentiate between classes and the objects. The classes are going to be used as blueprints, and they're going to be used for designing objects or instantiating new objects. On the other hand, we have objects which have the characteristics defined in their classes. And usually, by default, these characteristics can't be changed at runtime. And this is very important. You have objects instantiated from the classes having the properties of those classes. So let's say, just as an example, we have a simple student class in Java programming language in here. I just tried to make it very short and simple just to convey the basic idea. And in here, we try to define a reference variable s1 of type student and then refer that one to an actual object of type student. The thing here is that we are instantiating an object of type student based on class student and calling a constructor of that class student. Again, if you're object-oriented programmer using Java or C# or C++ for a long time, it's always going to be like this. And you might wonder how we could have objects without having classes first. The interesting point in here is that in JavaScript, we only have objects. So we don't have a concept like class, and we don't create objects based on instantiating out of those classes. So again, if you're a programmer like me, if you're an object-oriented programmer, then you might wonder, how come? How could we have objects without having classes first? And that's the whole point. JavaScript is an object-based language. On the other hand, JavaScript is a prototype-based language. So it's like everything is based on prototypes. And objects in JavaScript are basically prototypical. This way, as we have mentioned in here, the objects could actually be used as prototypes or some basic models for other objects, which as a result, it's like they share the properties with the object used as their prototype. In other words, the objects we have in JavaScript, they inherit their properties and methods from their prototypes, not from any classes. And therefore, to understand the JavaScript better, we have to understand prototypes first. Of course, later we'll correct ourselves better, so we don't have things like methods, as we call them methods in Java or C#. It's like mostly functions, because JavaScript is based on the functions. But anyway, for now, let's think that all the properties, characteristics, and methods are going to be inherited into the objects from their prototypes, not from any classes. So as you see, if you understand these basic concepts of prototypes, now that will be possible to implement the other object-oriented principles, let's say things like inheritance, in JavaScript as well. Having said all this, in the next video, we're going to see what exactly are prototypes with more details.